Back in March, as you all know, we did our long-awaited, hotly anticipated Copaganda episode. It was titled, Can Copaganda Ever Be Good? And featured special guests Tia Oso and Dr. Jarrett Loggins. When we say Copaganda, we mean shows like Law & Order, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that are supposed to make us feel like cops, that are supposed to make us like cops and feel like they're necessary and important in society. It's exactly like the term sounds like, right? Propaganda for, 12, as the streets might say. We got a number of emails from many of our listeners and viewers about that episode with some extra questions about other forms of media that may or may not be Copaganda. Perhaps they're Copaganda-ish, if you will, which got us thinking about the need for a potential follow-up conversation, okay? And then on the other podcast that I host called What a Day, check us out if you have not already. We've been doing
one of the other podcasts that you host, to be clear.
Well, I do have a few of them, but nonetheless.
Yes.
On What a Day, we've been doing some coverage of Cop City, the estimated $90 million training facility that is apparently going to be built in the outskirts of Atlanta that organizers and community members have been protesting for the last couple years now. There is a lot of foolishness and violence wrapped up in the Cop City story that we will get to shortly, but I bring it up in this conversation about Copaganda because the two feel related to me, particularly around the idea of how what we have been taught to believe about cops via the images on our screens could very well be connected to the thoughts and feelings around a perceived need for a facility of this type. The blatant disregard to, the blatant disregard local officials have had for the community outrage that we've seen as it relates to this story. And so, to join us in further teasing out all of this, okay, you know them and you love them. They are the author of Belly of the Beast, The Politics of Anti-Fatness as Anti-Blackness, okay? Former guest host of this very show. Okay, they have been deeply involved with the Stop Cop City movement as well. They're also the editor-at-large at Scalawag Magazine. And as I mentioned earlier, it is through a Twitter Spaces that I did with them and Co-Brag at Scalawag last year about Copaganda that laid the foundation for the conversations we've had on the show already. Please welcome back to FANTI, Deshaun L. Harrison. Welcome.
Period. Heavy on the L. Heavy on it. And thank you. I'm glad to be back. You did say you know them and you love them. You might know me and not love me, and that's okay too.
Period.
Or they may know you and not love you.
Right. Exactly. Because here I am. Because irrespective of where you fall on that spectrum, here we are.
Big purr. I'm here, like Fantasia said. Okay, so to get us started, I want to ask you the question that we started our last Copaganda discussion with, which is, in what ways has Copaganda manifested in your life? What is your relationship to it? Are you a Law and Order girly too, or nah?
One thing I'm never gonna lie about is my love for some of the cop shows. It's no tea, no shade, but 911 with Miss Angela Bassett, she eats down 727 on 30. That's
you know what? We ain't 10 seconds into you being on.
That's my girl. Look, we all exist in a state of contradiction. And yeah, I grew up watching Criminal Minds with my mom and CSI Miami and lived for those shows. And, I will sit in front of the TV and watch a good House of Cards or Madam Secretary or, any of the political dramas on TV right now. And it's not good, right? It's they really are trying to teach you to be invested in police in the state. And at the same time, it is good. The drama is it's just great. So the writers be writing, and we supporting them right now on strike.
Listen, the writers be writing, okay?
This is the perfect time to not watch these shows.
That part.
We are.
That part. Can I ask a follow up there though? Because you mentioned House of Cards and Madam Secretary. Do we consider them to fall under Copaganda?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think about shows like that, like political dramas writ large, as propaganda, particularly because of the connection between the state and the police. Right, the police exist as a way to protect the state and its interests. And so I think a lot about like Kamala Harris, who is on record for calling herself the top cop of California at one point. I guess now the top cop of the world as a U.S. imperialist. And so, yeah, I don't see a way to separate the two from one another. And so they definitely are propaganda in perhaps a more meta way. And the shows are good, like the political drama of it all.
Okay, so now I'm disturbed because in the part 1 episode we talked about Copaganda, and I was like, I don't really have like Copaganda shows that I love. But as soon as you said political dramas, I was like, not the Scandal, honey, not the Escandalo, not the How to Get Away with Murders, not the House of Cards was really good too. And I'm like, but as you say that, I think like, oh yeah. She's not wrong. She's not wrong.
I'm glad you brought this up, and I'm gonna let you finish, Deshawn. I'm glad you brought this up because one of the letters that we got, we read it out on the show a number of weeks ago. I believe it was from Abinay is her name, and they were talking about how shows like, we had a separate letter that was talking about how shows like Bones and Criminal Minds fit into this, and Abinay brought up The Mentalist on HBO Max, and I just want to read a bit from her email. And she says, I've been watching The Mentalist on HBO Max for the past few months. It's a cop-adjacent show that focuses on a white man who pretty much uses trickery and deceit to help the California Department of Investigation solve murders. He is as unscrupulous as they come, plants evidence, lies to witnesses, futzes around with crime scenes, etc. all the time in the name of quote-unquote justice. And even worse, the actual law enforcement agents that are supposed to keep him in check just go along with the bullshit. Abinay says that they've been covering gun violence for The Guardian for the past 4 years and understand how hard it is to get a murder conviction and how easily these cases are dismissed or fall apart because of trifling police work. So while watching this show, she finds herself yelling at the TV about how none of this evidence he finds through trickery and lies will hold up in court. She said the listener letter that y'all read a few weeks ago made me realize that this show and others like it are all part of the same machine as Law and Order and Blue Bloods, in that the people who work to quote unquote stop crime can do what they have to do as long as the bad guy is caught in the end.
Yeah. You know what? That actually makes me think about the show Lucifer, one of my favorite shows. I don't know if y'all have ever seen it or not, but
I've seen that man. I met him and I was like, who is that? And they were like, he's on a TV show.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God.
Cut it out.
Yes. But the show, like, I think the show it has a really great theological analysis, which is why I love it. But also, he literally is like falling in love with this detective and does a lot of things to like fuck with crime scenes and with like the case itself as a way to get convictions, to lock people away. It is another form of propaganda that I think is not the traditional, CSI, NCIS, Criminal Minds, but it's still very much aligned with painting any show that paints the state or its agents as good, as something to have empathy for, as something to be compassionate towards, is propaganda.